Hello, hello, everyone. This is the David Washington Show. Thank you for joining us. I have an incredible guest with me today, and I can't say it enough. Neal Carter opened a world to me, and without any hesitation, I would like to introduce Neal Carter of New View Consulting LLC, the principal and founder. Neal, thank you for joining me on the David Washington Show. I appreciate it.
Thank you, David. It's an honor. Looking forward to it.
Excellent, excellent. I was introduced to your organization, the Black Consultants Group, and by our friend Makeda,
Hmm.
and it was just like wow, it just opened up so many different possibilities of collaboration. And then I think it's been about maybe 2 years since I've been involved, and at first I was just like, okay, wow, okay, what do I do? It's a great networking source. And I say it was just like so many black professionals and everything that they offer and that they do and the advice that's available. It was finding the gold mine. And it it made me feel that I wasn't alone in this space. And I just have to say it again. Thank you, Neal. It is phenomenal. And with the other interviews with Holly, Evan, Daquan, and Chuck, I believe I've established professional relationships for the foreseeable future. It's great. It's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Tell us a little bit about yourself, or a lot about who is Neal Carter, and a brief history of New View Consulting and everything else that you do.
Sure. So, started New View in 2002. Um, it was a firm that actually was initially run by my dad, and he was actually using it as a. It was originally called New View Productions, and he was using it predominantly as a firm that uh, he was using it for digital photography actually on the side.
Okay.
And on my birthday, he turned it over. He turned it over to me, and said, "Do with it what do with it what you want." So I said, "Okay." He knew I had a passion for business. He just wanted me to kind of take the next necessary step. Um, I come from a union family. My
Yes.
mom was in NADCA. My father was CWA, uh, and more specifically, CWA Eastern Regional Vice President for a number of years. So I have been not only a part of a union family. My brothers in the NEA, but I've been associated with unions, the working class, my
Mhm.
entire life, and it's not something that I shy away from. Uh, and like I said, in 2002, started New View Consulting. The first client we actually had was actually in the 2003 cycle. Um, and been running strong, helping elect folks at all levels of government, helping
Yes.
elect train folks at all levels of government since then. Um, and yeah, um, it's been a long, steady process. We celebrated 20 years this past
Congratulations.
January. Thank you. And in, I guess July of 2020, while everybody was inside for the during obviously the pandemic that affected the entire world.
Hmm.
Um, I had already been in conversations years prior, while I've been doing this work with other Black consultants about this idea of creating a space for us and by us, right? Obviously, didn't want to call it FUBU because FUBU was already a thing.
Yes.
And I have plenty of FUBU to prove it. Um, uh, Still to this day, I don't think it's outdated or anything like that. I know
No.
folks who don't look like me tend to latch on to things now, and I know it's hip to wear '90s fashion all of a sudden. Um, but I don't shy away from my past in that regard.
Okay.
But yeah, I really uh, wanted to create something with other folks that kind of was for us, by us, and kind of created a space because I knew that there were more. I knew it was just more than my Rolodex, my personal Rolodex of the Black consultants that I knew. I knew there were other Black consultants in other parts of the country and the world that
Mhm.
wanted to interact, that wanted to collaborate, that wanted a space for that we could call our own, and wanted to
Right.
talk about things that only we could talk about amongst ourselves, that we couldn't talk about with our Black or non-Black counterparts
Yes.
in the same industry. So, I wanted to make sure that that space was exist. That space existed. I was looking around the different avenues, and being a part of several lists and knowing several different Black consultants already. I kind of wanted to make sure. I said, hey, there's an opportunity here to build something, and other folks agreed. And when we started with, I think, 20 or some odd members. And then I said, don't shy away from inviting uh, folks from your own network, because I know that my network is my network, and I know that and I consistently grew it, obviously, but I wanted to make sure that while I was still doing the work, I've always been a big proponent of collaboration, and
Okay.
whether that's working with political action committees, whether that's working with IEs, whether that's working with the Democratic committees, how often or inoften or how infrequently they want to work with me, I still focus on collaboration, and I will not shy away from sharing um, RFPs with like-minded uh, uh, firms. Particularly if the RFP that is sent to me doesn't really fit what I do for a
Sure.
living, but may fit the services of somebody else. So, as you know, being a part of the Slack, um, it's a internal Slack that has member access, and talking with the rest of the admin team, we're going to start to roll out membership tiers and private channels and things along that line, so that there's even more exclusivity
Good.
within the Slack, but then also creating a space where folks who want to potentially uh, work for any one of our firms,
Okay.
can do that. We do have a jobs channel, we do have a
Yes.
mentoring channel, but we want to make sure that folks that want to get into this industry have that space to do that. And
Correct.
they're not necessarily, not that we don't want them sharing space with our existing paying members, because eventually they will have their own firms and be able to do that. But we should also but I also wanted to cultivate a space so that the folks who have been doing this work for 5 to 10 years, or even 1 to 2 years, could be potentially mentored, if they so choose, by folks who have been doing it, like myself and others, for 20 plus. Um, as someone who in my personal life has been a mentor and a mentee, I am also a big proponent of mentoring in general. So, uh, I know that in our community, um, that's something, as someone who certainly believes in, obviously I don't have kids yet, but as someone who believes that, it takes a community to raise a child,
Yes.
not just, I think that also goes into business as well. I think it takes a community to help lift a business up. Um, and I think we are
Okay.
and so much so that I think it's really our community that, um, and we've certainly seen the government uh, uh, commit all kinds of heinous crimes as it relates to when Black businesses and Black people are thriving. Governments tend to react negatively to that. Um,
Exactly. That's
uh,
very
so,
true.
we can't shy away from our own history. Um, but the truth of the matter is, we are living in a it's not even that we're living in a political climate that is ahistorical. Um, I know that when I put together the Black Consultant Group, that it was my goal to ensure that um, the consultant, that everyone had, not to, I wasn't interested in having a seat at the table. I was interested in the table, that the table being built by us, and then everyone coming to our table willing to collaborate with us.
That is a good concept. And you touched on several points I'd like to explore further, particularly the collaboration part and the creation of the Slack group. Neal, the work that you've created for me, wow! Just the RFPs alone, I'm looking at my team and saying to them, okay, we need to keep up. We need to grow. There are so many opportunities available, and you have opened the world of these opportunities and possibilities. And it's given me an opportunity with my team to say, okay, let's pull back as far as some of our long term national goals and look at what is being requested from different parties and see where can we find our niche, where can we find an area where we can use our expertise to help those individuals who do come to you, to the Black Consultants Group, and say, hey, help us out. It's a lot of information
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of opportunity. Um, you talked about the Slack group and creating the membership tiers and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's one of the projects that you're discussing. I know you discussed already the Black Consultants Group. You just recently co-founded and launched Disability Victory. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that. That's brand spanking new.
Yeah. So, uh, Disability Victory is a C4 that I co-founded with Sarah Blahovic, um, and it came from the Elevate program when Sarah worked at the National Council for Independent Living.
Okay.
The Elevate program was something that she and I started in 2019. And the goal of that was to, I'll kind of start with the Elevate program. The goal of the Elevate program was to um, get disabled folks who were interested in either running for office or working on a political campaign interested in or train them to be prepared to either run for office or uh, work on a political campaign.
Okay.
Um, the difficulty with it being under Nickel's umbrella, unfortunately, was that because Nickel is a C3, anything we talked about had to be from a non partisan lens.
Okay.
Um, so we
Yeah,
had
makes sense.
an audience of Republicans, Democrats, and Independents. Um, whereas with Disability Victory, the organization that Sarah and I co-founded in May of this year, um, that is focused on the progressive community. That's not to say that
Okay.
there aren't disabled Republicans or disabled independents. Obviously, there are, but we can also be realistic in that unfortunately that the Republican Party tends to be in the business of dehumanizing um, and erasing disabled people. Now, obviously, the Democratic Party is by no means oblivious to that, and obviously, we aren't
Sure.
affiliated in any way with the Democratic Party. I want to make
Sure.
that clear. When I, you know, by saying we are interested in helping elect and connect disabled progressives, that's specific. That's not linking to a particular party. That is linking to our value system, our specifically our progressive value system.
Okay.
Um, um, we understand that the Republican administration or Republicans administrations of the past. I mean, we are celebrating the 33rd year of the ADA this year. Um, the official day was as of this recording or whenever this is released. I think you said between the 7th and the 8th, but um, uh, as of this recording, the ADA was celebrated 2 days prior to as of this recording. So when
Okay.
you're talking about um, you know the ADA and talking and understanding that obviously the ADA was passed through a nonpartisan Congress with a Republican president who
Yes.
signed it into law. Um, understanding that that Republican president had to be was under significant pressure to sign the ADA. Also understanding that the definition of this disability, particularly after the pandemic, which we are actually still in, of
Yes.
2020, the evolution of the definition of disability specifically has changed significantly. So while we are in the
Yes.
33rd anniversary of the ADA, we understand as you know, an organization, and I understand particularly as an individual living with a disability that you know, that definition has evolved from when the ADA was written. Right? There isn't even, there is a lot of language that is missing from the ADA that protects the larger community of the disability community. That's not to just harp on the ADA, but that is to say that it's not just a matter of electing disabled elected officials or having disabled staff on campaigns in order to see change. But we already live in a world that isn't accessible. So having more disabled staff, I mean, we just, a great example is with us, Senator Fetterman, uh,
Yes.
and his recent and all the kerfuffles around his recent ableism,
Mhm.
but and the ableism he had to deal with, relating to needing a prompter and everyone saying, "Oh well, is he fit for office?" Right? That is inherent ableism, right?
Mhm. That's
And
correct.
while uh, Senator Fetterman may not have the language to call it inherent ableism, I can say what it is, and
Okay.
it's inherent ableism. And he might not be able to do it because of political correctness, and he's a U.S. senator and all, and this, that, and the third. But I think it's important to name it when we know it. Um, and also acknowledge that with an organization like Disability Victory, we were founded in May. We are still trying to fundraise as much as we can to raise money for our first cohort for hopefully this fall.
Okay.
And we're trying to build out what the training apparatus looks like for not just this cohort but also in the future. But also I want to mention that the goal of our goal isn't just to train progressive disabled folks to run for office and to fill campaign offices. Our other goals include creating a network of existing elected officials that are disabled to
Okay.
connect with the future. It really, the bench, as we, in progressive politics likes to say, the bench of future disabled candidates to connect with existing disabled candidates so they can talk about, this is what I had to go through running for office. So this is what you may have to deal with as well. And those
Exactly.
important barriers, right? Because, we did, and this is something kind of linking back to the Black Consultant Group. It's kind of why we wanted to create. It's kind of why the Black Consultant Group exists. Is because
Bye.
when we are at conferences, whether it's Netroots or the AAPC or campaigns and elections,
Yes.
unfortunately, we as Black consultants are, and I've used this analogy before, and you may have heard me say it in the past. So you're not hearing so you're not hearing it for the first time, but your listeners are hearing it for the first time. At those conferences, I know as a Black consultant, unless I see another Black consultant, I feel like a peppercorn in a giant salt shaker.
Yes.
And
I get that.
I understand that there are several Black consultants that are members of the Black Consultant Group that are also members of other membership organizations, particularly the American Association of Political Consultants, and more power to them.
Sure.
But but they also understand the need for our own group, because
Right.
there's things that you can't talk about in the membership, in the membership channels of the AAPC that you can talk about amongst your own folks, right? I understand that that everybody amongst the Black Consultant Group membership may not get along with each other. I know that in some cases there are situations where folks may have taken business from each other, and there may have been
Mhm.
backbiting, there may have been undercutting, but unfortunately, that's the industry that we live,
That's true.
that we all chose. So while I understand the passion behind wanting to make to want to uh, not necessarily cause issue, but I, I the goal was to create community, and I believe I've accomplished that. The first goal with the Black Consultant Group was to create community. The second goal with the Black Consultant Group
Done.
was to reach some level of capacity, and we have 300 plus members and growing daily.
Wow.
Um, and
Excellent.
we are the only active membership group of we're the only active membership group of membership organization of Black consultants in the country. Yes, there are obviously, there's a great group of Black consultants in the Seattle, Washington area. There's the Justice League in New York.
Okay.
And and there are other small pocket, obviously the Four Colored Girls is one of the most well known, but all of those organizations, nothing, and this is not a knock against any of them, because all of their
Sure.
members are active members within the Black Consultant Group. So it's not a situation where, you can't be a member of the Justice League or the Four Colored Girls or the group in the Seattle, Washington area and not be a member of the Black Consultant Group. It's not that case at all. Like, I want people to operate in both spaces. And
That's
I've told the leadership of those organizations exactly that. It's why we're able to have Marvin Randolph from the Justice League. It's why we're able to have uh, Donna Brazil
yes.
amongst our members. You know, and every time I mention Donna Brazil or Cornell Belcher or Doug Thornell as members of our organization, some people get wide eyed. And they're like, "Oh my God, how did they become a member of this? This is amazing!" And it's just like they they have created their own organizations in the past, or they knew the importance of this group existing and they wanted to be counted amongst its numbers. As far as disability victory is concerned, I'm going to shift gears for a second.
Sure.
Um, the importance of disability victory is that we are the only, similarly the Black Consultant Group being the only membership organization of Black consultants in the country active. Disability Victory is the only national organization doing electoral work in the country. The
Wow.
only. Now, are there other disability led organizations doing works in parts of the country? Yes. New Disabled South is doing great work in the southeast region of the country, and there are several other disability organizations doing regional work. But Disability Victory is the only national organization doing the work. So when we talk about funding, when we talk about gaps in electoral justice, understand that we at Disability Victory understand the gap that we are filling, right? We understand that it's not, but we also understand that it's about being a part of coalitions, working with like-minded organizations and individuals, and creating a progressive space. But we also had to, I have to call a spade. I have to be honest in that
Sure.
we, still are still actively having to call in our partners when they do make missteps as it relates to inaccessibility.
Sure.
When it comes
Yes.
to lack of captions or lack of alt text on their images, particularly during ADA's 33rd anniversary. Like, so when we are, so, and that's not just related to my work with Disability Victory. More
Right.
people should caption their videos. More people should be using alt text on their images. And there's,
Yes.
resources
Yes.
out there to accomplish those goals. Some have cost to them, others don't. But
Mhm.
at the end of the day, accessibility benefits everyone, not just the disability community. People think, oh, well, if you have captions, then that helps, uh, you know, that group of disabled folks understand what's happening on screen. No, that helps everybody, because
Exactly. You're right. It does.
because if English is not your first language,
That's correct.
and you and I are speaking English, and someone can convert the captions to another language, their native language, it is that makes that makes the video accessible for them.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. You're
accessibility is for
100%
everyone.
correct. I'm sorry, you're 100% correct. And wow, you just laid out so much. I took a couple of notes. First of all, where are you located? Where is New View Consulting? Disability Victory, the Black Consultants Group. Where are you located?
So the Black Consultant Group and Disability Victory don't actually have physical locations, unless you count them
Right.
online.
Mhm.
Um, my firm, New View, is based in Maryland, but obviously
Okay.
we're a national firm.
Yes.
Uh, but
And
if folks want to be hyper specific, if they're not accustomed to me to Maryland, then the DC area probably
okay. And
inside the
Neal, there
Beltway.
you go. And then and a lot of people will definitely understand that. And Neil, you have been profiled. You have on national television, in national media, international media, if I remember correctly. So you, with the experience that you have and everything that you've brought to the Black Consultants Group, you know what you're talking about, and you do have that network that continues to inform you of everything that's going on. And you brought up the ADA and 33 years. Oh my God, I was a 20-year-old when that came out. And I remember it to this
I'm
day.
not going to say how old I was, but I don't want to make you or myself feel old.
With these young people running circles around me on my team, I'm feeling it each and every day. However, you mentioned the ADA and the pandemic and COVID, and now we're seeing people with long-term COVID.
Yes.
And my concern, and you kind of touch on this, is um, people being protected by the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, um, because they are afflicted with COVID, long-term COVID. Is that something that has come up in conversations that you've had nationally?
Yes. Obviously, I am a proponent of expanding the definition of accessibility, not just as it relates to the ADA, but just generally speaking. And if it's and I'm not just talking about the dictionary definition. I'm just talking about the
Okay.
definition. The medical definition needs to be expanded. The dictionary definition needs to be expanded. The as defined in law, federally and statewide, needs to be expanded. But not just in the United States. It needs to be expanded worldwide.
Hmm.
Uh, because everyone has a different understanding of what disability, not just what disability is, but how it shows up. We in the Black community have a lot of internalized ableism as it relates to uh, accessibility.
Okay.
We've unfortunately used, not necessarily, yes, some of us still use outdated words that could be considered slurs within the disability community, and in other times, it's
Yeah.
situations where we're using uh, words that, because they're outdated, or uh, because the definition hasn't been expounded on, and
Okay.
also, in addition, a lack of education around disability. Someone in a wheelchair,
Important.
or someone with Down syndrome, or someone with canes, and someone who has a ocular implant, or someone with glasses, aren't necessarily all categorized as disabled. But all of the people that I mentioned have, but all the people that I mentioned fall into the disability category. But the
That's
problem
true.
is, while that's the case, the definition hasn't been expanded to include all of those people.
Sure.
Um,
Okay.
when we think about accessibility from a physical standpoint, a lot of times ADA compliant, quote unquote, means adding a ramp, or putting braille on a door, or a building,
Right.
or paperwork, or but it needs to be expanded beyond that. It needs to have cart caption. We need to have more ASL interpreters, and not just ASL interpreters, but also multilingual interpreters, right?
Correct.
When we're looking at these concerts, and we're seeing, all of these artists use ASL interpreters, and particularly with the Black artists, and you have to have artists that understand, um, you know, that understand language, and understand specifically AAVE in a lot of cases, because a lot of the songs do use AAVE. So as a result, the interpreters have to know what the AAVE is in order to sign it correctly. And also understand that, I'm sure your listeners and maybe even you didn't even know that there is uh, BSAL, which is Black um, uh, ASL.
Wow.
And I'm not, and there isn't just Black ASL. There's also the ASL in, for other demographic groups as well. But see but when we are talking about interpreters, when we are talking about expanding the definition of disability, when we are talking about how, in my opinion, the ADA is incredibly outdated because, when you and I were young in the uh, 80s and 90s, again, not trying to age you or me, but when you and I were running the streets in the 80s and 90s, um, the ADA was, and disability at that time looked a lot different than it does now, and
Yes, that's
accessibility
true.
looked a lot differently than it does now. So when we are thinking about what accessibility is now, uh, in 2023 and beyond, that has to, in my opinion, include more people, particularly in your line of questioning as it relates to the expanding on including folks with long COVID. Um,
Okay.
because as we are thinking about how, and not just long, because there's also different variations of long COVID. There's temporary long COVID, and then there's long-term long COVID. So there's there's the ailments and different things happening with different people that affect people differently depending on their body type, because you could be perfectly healthy before you have had COVID twice, and then you
Yes.
have some long-term um, something long-term debilitating you, a disability that you may not even acknowledge. um, some people have had long-term hearing loss, some folks have had long or short-term blindness,
Hmm.
and that's just scratching the surface. There are so many things related to long COVID that we don't even know, because we are still 3 years out from the initial
Onset.
pandemic from 2020.
Yes.
So there's so much um, to expound upon there.